does one feminine presenting person of considerable endowment do for support when they want to rock out like our man Louis Couture's? I've been pondering this question for about a year now, and y'all, I finally think that I've found a solution. And in a garment that's about to become the most versatile, most used piece in my forever wardrobe. Stay tuned. Hey y'all, Jackie here, and welcome to Fantastical Follies, where we love a multitasker. And I honestly think this is going to be the multitasker of all multitaskers. It's a garment based on a 15th century design that will support me as a supportive undergarment for historical masculine wear, and as a history-bounding top that's historically appropriate from the medieval era through the golden age of piracy into the 1970s and all the way into today. Does that sound awesome or what? Today, I'm going to show you how to make a supportive kirtle top using historically adequate materials and techniques, completely hand-sewn and completely badass. Y'all, I am so excited about this project. And the best thing is, once the patterning is done, even hand-sewn, it's a quick weekend project. I love me an instant gratification make. I hope you'll stick with me till the end of the video, because instead of a standard reveal, I'm going to dive into my closet and see how many fun outfits I can do in a little fashion show. Now, there won't be any historical masculine wear in the reveal because I haven't made any of it yet. I need the foundation garment first, right? If you're looking forward to seeing me do a historically accurate 15th century Ezio Auditore cosplay from Assassin's Creed 2, as well as some of my fun 17th century gender-bending fantasy wear, make sure you subscribe to my channel because they're going to be a lot of fun. What I'm going to do today is take a historically accurate supportive kirtle pattern and chop off the skirt. Originally, I was just going to use my existing kirtle pattern, and if you haven't seen that video, it's linked here. But I've already had to alter this kirtle since I made it, and because it's a curved front, it's not so easy to take in. As always, I want to make this as size flexible as possible, so my idea was to start fresh since I'd have to repattern it anyway, and use the flat-fronted kirtle method from Le Simple instead of the curved front, which I've already done and shown to y'all. I've linked to the tutorial for both of them down on the description below. My idea is I'll use lacing strips instead of putting the eyelets in the front of the kirtle, and leave a lot of seam allowance in the front, so if I need to take it in or let it out, I can just remove the strips and do it from the center front. Now, the one concern I had about the straight front has to do with the comments in Le Simple's tutorial, in that the straight front kirtle isn't so great for people who are busty like me, and it's a little more restrictive both for breathing and for moving. So I decided to do a wearable mock-up first so I could really test it out before I cut into my more expensive linen. So let's get started on this awesome make. First order of business was to make my initial pattern. I took my already made medieval block and traced it onto a piece of paper. I can't emphasize enough how handy it is to have this already prepared. If you're interested in making one of these yourself, you can check out this very silly video I did about making my block with duct tape and mild contortion. Then I traced this onto some basic muslin for the initial fitting and basted it together. Off camera, I used the same process I did for my supportive kirtle video to fit the initial mock-up. I laid down and pinched and pinned until I got the fit I wanted. This is not something easily filmed, so if you want a more in-depth description of how to do this, check out the link to Le Simple in the description below. As you can see, I needed to make some significant adjustments to the side, mostly because I've changed sizes since I did this block, but also because this is a straight front kirtle, and so the majority of the shaping is happening on the side seams and not the center front like my other kirtle. I'm using a water-soluble pen to mark my adjustments. Then I traced both left and right sides of the front and back onto paper to true up the pattern. All right, so these lines are so faint that I can barely see them myself. So I'm not going to try and light this in a way that you can see it because I can barely see it. But I'll point out that apart from this little shoulder bit here and this tiny little bit here under the arms, and this is the back, these both turned out fairly symmetrical. Okay, here's the other one. See? I mean, very, very small difference, except in the shoulder, and then the neckline, obviously. But that's because I cut it on myself and I wasn't making too much of an effort. So, in lieu of me spending a lot of time showing you something that I've already done, all I'm gonna do now is true up the differences. I'm gonna make both of these center backs a little bit bigger, and I'm going to favor the larger shoulder, true up the neckline, and then get all of this cut out. This is annoyingly too large. I'm getting this like huge gaping here, and it's also not giving me the lift that I want. However, I can tell that I'm already gonna love this. I love this pattern. I think I'm gonna like this shirt better than the actual one, even though the actual one is plain for a reason, because it's supposed to match skirts I already own that have patterns. Anyway, that's a tangent. What I'm going to do is take in the sides. If you can see, I'm not sure you can because it's yellow. I've marked where the base of my bust should lie, and I am going to take in at the sides about 1/4 of an inch. Now, the tricky part is that this should not be tighter. And this is a comfortable. I want there to be a little room here because if I'm wearing this under a petticoat, I need to have some room for the petticoat. So I'm going to have to make an extra weird curve to get this as tight as I need it to be. But it is very important for it to be super tight under the bust, or you won't get the support you need. If I still need to take in, I'm actually going to, and I don't want to do this, I'm going to take it in the center, because to me this is where the excess really is. I've actually sewn this. It's not just basted because I was overconfident, as I often am, and I cannot find my seam rippers, so I'm hoping taking it in at the sides will help. But if not, we're gonna take in the center just a little bit to get rid of this excess, and fingers crossed that'll be enough to get started on the actual fabric. Here's the mark I was talking about in the last section. I measured each side. One is 2 inches and one is 3. I opted to use 2 for both sides. Then I marked 1/4 of an inch into the seam and drew a curve. I then measured 1 inch down and drew the line to meet the existing stitching. This ended up to be not enough, so I took it in a further 1/4 of an inch on each side. And then I marked my stitch lines around the neckline and the underarms. I basted in the neckline to do one more fitting. After losing my temper and buying 5 new seam rippers, I ripped out the lacing strips because there was still some excess in the center. I measured in about 1 inch on each side and re-sewed the strips. This turned out to be what I needed, so I went ahead and sewed this together permanently after making my adjustments on the pattern. So let's let's get to making the real thing. Okay, sharing a lesson with you. When you do the tube with the yarn like this, put a knot in it and don't use your serger to serge this line because it'll just cut this off. So I've done this several times and failed several times, so I thought I would share that with you. You need a knot. And the hardest part of this is getting it started. And I find that if you kind of pull the fabric a little bit, just kind of fiddle with it a little bit, there. Now you can pull it through. Boom. Easy, right? And then you will need a pin or something to get the little corners out. And all you have to do is snip your yarn as close as you can without cutting into your strip. Boom. Done. Alrighty, I have serged all of the edges of all of my pieces. Yes, this is not historically accurate. I don't care. If they had had access to a serger, they would have used a serger, I'm sure. I anticipate wearing these tops a lot, and I won't always be wearing a shift underneath, so they are going to get gross and sweaty, and I will need to be able to wash them in the washing machine. I want them to be as sturdy as possible. Also, if all of the edges are serged, if I need to take this in or out, it'll be much easier, it'll hold up much better. So I did not have enough fabric. So I had to make a slight adjustment on the back. As you can see, this has got like a really weird shape. I didn't have enough to get the full inch seam allowance on the back, but I did have enough to get the ½ inch seam allowance and the stitch. So that's the important thing. As long as I can sew my ½ inch here, if I need to let this out in the back later down the line, I can always piece this weird curve in together. So what I'm going to do now is get everything pinned together. I'm going to sew my lacing strips, and then I will be ready to start on the neckline. First, I pinned each corresponding front and lining piece together. Then I went ahead and machine basted them to keep the pieces from shifting during sewing. Then I straightened and ironed both of my lacing strips. Then I marked the armholes and neckline of all of my pieces in prep for sewing. Here are the completed lacing strips. I also hand stitched the neckline and armholes down using a tunnel stitch. It's not likely these seams will need adjusting in the future, so I wanted them nice and tucked away. Here's a close-up of the tunnel stitching. It's nearly invisible and really quick to do. It's one of my favorite stitches. I realized one of the reasons that the mock-up was so large in front was that I hadn't accounted for the lacing strips. Duh! So I measured the distance between the eyelet and the edge and measured that distance inward for my stitch line. Then I folded it back and ironed so I'd have a nice even line on the front to fold. I folded both pieces inward and pressed so I had a nice sharp line. Here's a demonstration of how I'm sewing on the lacing strips. This is a method I've seen other historical makers do, but I don't specifically know if there's a term for it. So if you know what it's called, leave me a comment below. I put the lacing strip and the front of the kirtle right sides together and edges matching. Then I'm using waxed doubled thread to whip stitch very close to the edge. I'm making very tight stitches and pulling hard to make sure it's secure. This seam is going to take a lot of strain, so even if this took forever and was a pain in my butt, it was necessary. Then I pinned the two back pieces together for sewing. And now, time for...
Okay, extreme close up! Wah! Wah!
Okay, it's been a little bit since I've checked in with y'all, and I'm sorry. It's been a trying week as I've been sewing this together. So I am going to show you what I've done and give you my comments. It's all pretty self-explanatory, so you didn't really miss anything except me griping. So let's turn the camera around and see what I've done. Okay, so essentially it's completely assembled. Here is the back, okay? Back stitched this, pressed it open. Same with the sides. Back stitched it, pressed it open. I had a little weird thing happening with the shoulder, so I had to snip that off, and then I just pressed it in. So the only thing left I have to do is sewing this bottom piece. I purposefully didn't sew the ends of these because I wanted to match it up exactly, align it exactly with the edge of this. I regret not sewing down this edge before I sewed everything together. Now the reason I did that was because I knew it was going to be a little uneven and I wanted to make sure everything was even, but it's hard to try it on when this is, you know, doing this. And I have an extra hole here. So I'm going to cut that off and then tuck it up, and then I'll just sew that back. It's going to be kind of bulky, but I don't care. It's not that big of a deal. Nobody's going to be looking. So what I'm going to do now is basically sew closed the bottom and then fix all of my little side seams, which I purposely left open because I wanted to make sure that I got everything even. And then I'm going to wear it for a little bit and make sure everything's okay. It does feel a little bit tighter than the other one, but I intentionally did that because this is all linen and the other one is cotton. The cotton one isn't going to stretch, but this one is going to stretch. So I'm going to wear it in a little bit before we do any form of reveal. I'm going to slip stitch this closed. Maybe you'll get a little bit of footage of that, maybe not. We'll see. All right. Don't you hate when that happens? I was so close. While I'm doing this last little bit, I just wanted to let y'all know that I am now on TikTok. So if you're over there, make sure you're following me for more content. My handle is @fantasticalfollies. No costuming. It was too long. I finished by closing up the last lacing strip. Now, time for the reveal. I mean, fashion show.
Oh my God!
Roxy, what? Speak to me.
Shall we begin? Let's begin now.
This is not a drill.
Repeat, this is not a drill.
Is that all you got?
Let's begin, pal.
What up?
And there you have it. What do y'all think? Which one of the outfits was your favorite? And can you think of any eras that I forgot that this top would work for? I'd love to see if I could style it in even more time periods. I'm not gonna lie, I'm so excited about these tops. I originally had plans to make a second in goldenrod, although I used up all of my backing linen for the wearable mock-up, so it's going to have to wait until I can get my hands on more. Some of those outfits I showed you are intentionally meant for the yellow one, like the red and orange skirt. And now I have 3 of them. Yes!
Hey y'all, Editing Jackie here. I realized I brought up a potential issue in the beginning of this video and never actually addressed it, and that is the comfort issue in regards to the flat-fronted kirtle versus the curved front kirtle. And so I haven't actually worn either of my kirtles all day yet, but I have worn both of them for several hours. And my take is this: I feel like the curved kirtle is definitely more comfortable and more supportive than the flat front. I'm finding that the flat front, I definitely have to do some adjustments to get me where I need to be while I'm lacing everything up, whereas the curved front kirtle, just kind of everything fits where it needs to be right off the bat. However, the person who had both of those kirtles made for her said that she had a hard time breathing and she felt very constricted with the flat front kirtle, and I don't feel like that at all. Perhaps because it's just a top and not a full gown, but I have no problems moving. I feel no restrictive movement. It is a little bit more restrictive than the curved front, but it is not something that is limiting, if that makes any sense. So I would definitely say that if you are on the bustier side, you are going to find the curved front kirtle more comfortable. However, I don't think it is restricting at all, and it's really going to end up being the final look that you want. Okay, back to your regularly scheduled programming.
Predictably, I like the patterned one the best. I will also say that the ribbon I'm using for lacing isn't ideal. I don't think it's going to be strong enough, and I really like it better when the lacing matches the color. I think the gold is distracting on the blue one. So eventually I'm going to make some finger loop braid for them, but that's going to have to be for another time. Thank y'all so much for watching. I hope I've inspired you to maybe take a shot at one of these babies. It was so easy to make, so quick to sew, and really is going to be a staple in my wardrobe. If you do end up making one of these, make sure you tag me when it's finished because I would love to see it. That's about it for me today. I have some fun projects coming up for y'all, so stay tuned. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't. I appreciate each and every one of you for taking the time to hang out with me today. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll catch y'all later.